How's it going, YouTube? Salt Princess here, and today I wanted to show you guys a little bit of a build idea that I've been kicking around as a bit of a project that I think I actually really intend to work on at the start of next league. This is going to be probably the most challenging league starter and the most just downright stupid league starter that I am ever going to attempt. But in 3.9, I have a feeling that I'm going to try to league start with an Onigoroshi character. Just for fun. That is, if I don't take part in the SSF-HC Awakener race. I haven't decided if I'm going to do that yet, but allow me to introduce you to my most ridiculous league start concept ever. It is an Onigoroshi Infernal Blow Elementalist Golemancer thing. We're utilizing the Onigoroshi Chiron Sword to give us a huge amount of physical damage while converting the overwhelming majority of that physical damage to fire, and we're lacking in a lot of attack speed, so we're trying to get very, very powerful single hits that have a very large explosive area of effect to very quickly clear densely populated maps. That being said, this build is capable of killing bosses, but it's not necessarily the strongest boss killing skill I've ever used. The unfortunate reality is swords are not capable of using shockwave, so we're losing out on a huge amount of damage that we could gain if we switched over to Consecrated Path. But that being said, this is very much a work in progress. It's what I'll be doing for the next couple days and fine-tuning and figuring out before the start of next league. But I did actually level this character all the way through the campaign in sort of a new game plus speedrunner style with, like, you know, your big fancy 7 league steps, all the good leveling uniques, the Resist Helm and like Darkness Enthroned and Loctonial Caress and those kinds of things to help me very quickly make it through the campaign. And so Onigoroshi dropped 6 linked, so that is why I intend to start my league with it, simply because farming a 6 link is never really a guarantee. I've gotten lucky 2 leagues in a row now, and I have a bad feeling about next league. So I would like something deterministic, and even though it takes a very obnoxiously long time to farm this particular item, which I'm not going to go into, that could be a whole other video, and somebody else has already made that video. So if you would like to know about how to farm your own Onigoroshi, I highly recommend that you check out somebody else's farming guide. It's pretty involved, but not too difficult. It just, like I said, takes a very long time. So what are we? What do we have going on here? As I said, we're an elementalist, and we're speccing into the Golem nodes over here, as well as the Pendulum of Destruction and Mastermind of Discord. You're going to want to start with these 2 while you're leveling, and then as you end the campaign, pick up the last 2. In terms of our ascendancy, our skill tree over here, realistically what you want to do while you're leveling, I recently respect this. I actually deleted the character that I leveled through the campaign today. I got it to level 68 by the end of it, but I just didn't want to level up to level 90, and I already have 3 elementalists that aren't doing anything in standard. So I just deleted the one that I leveled and respect one of the ones that had nothing on it and swapped all the gear all over. But what you're going to want to do when you start your campaign is you're going to want to come up through these nodes here, take Deep Wisdom, and then at some point you're going to realize very quickly that you need a little bit more dexterity. So at least in terms of just picking up some quick stats in the beginning, Practical Application is a really good node to hit, and then you come up through Heart and Soul and just come down over this way until you get basically to the Inquisitor starting zone. You're going to take Retribution, the health nodes, and then basically beeline it straight over here to all the elemental conversion nodes over here. This is because Onigoroshi has such an enormous amount of physical damage through her Embrace, which is a buff that you get after you ignite somebody. Her Embrace says you cannot be stunned. You gain 123% of sword's physical damage as extra fire damage. You're unaffected by burning grounds, immune to freeze, chill, and ignite, and you gain 20% increased attack, cast, and movement speed. It's a pretty amazing buff. It only lasts for 3 seconds though. But because you get so much additional physical damage, as well as elemental damage, taking these nodes is actually a pretty substantial amount of damage. After that, you're going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of level 30, and you're going to want to start coming up here to pick up these minion nodes. Actually, I should slow my roll. After you pick up this elemental wheel, you're actually going to want to come up and get the Golem commander node first. By that time, you should also probably have Liege of the Primordial from your first Trial of Ascendancy or Labyrinth run. And at that point, you're going to want to move over and pick up Spiritual Aid. Don't worry about my Timeless Jewel, it's really not that good. It just helps for my strength stat for the most part. And that's also something that's not going to be enormously available at the start of next league, especially if you're in the SSF race. Towards the end game, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to come over to more like the assassin side of the tree and pick up some crit nodes and some physical damage nodes. And there's even a one-handed damage wheel somewhere. That would be worth looking into. Oh, darn it. Well, let's not worry about that. One of the things that this build lacks, because the way that I have built it, there's just so many unique items that it's very challenging to find yourself a little bit of attack speed unless you roll some pretty amazing gloves, which I didn't do. So that being said, one of the things that you might want to consider doing is getting yourself a little bit of attack speed and or accuracy through nodes like Precision or other nodes like Coordination for attack speed and Depth Perception for a little bit more accuracy. There's also quite a bit of accuracy over in like the Marauder and Inquisitor section as well. So if you find yourself struggling with accuracy, there's plenty that you can do to get just a little tiny bit more. Although I'm struggling to find them at the moment. That being said, that's a relatively nice look at the passive tree. There's nothing too insane about the tree other than obviously the Primordial Harmony Jewel, the Prismatic Jewel, the Anima Stone. This actually gives us one more maximum Golem. And then the Primordial Eminence. These 3 jewels in conjunction with the Primordial Chain Amulet give us about 4 additional golems. This gives us a 5th additional golem, a 6th and a 7th additional golem, which after you hit the primordial, I believe this actually gives you 2 golems. So it brings you up to a total of 9 golems. Realistically, you can very easily get up to 8. The Primordial Chain is a little bit cheaper than the Anima Stone, and I think a little bit more readily available. We'll see how the divination cards play out. There's a new div card that gives you prismatic jewels, and this is the only prismatic jewel other than a Watcher's Eye that can be yielded from those. So I don't know how available these will be, but like I said, this is kind of a stupid and ambitious league starter. So that being said, I want to show you what the build can do with just a Magnate. And really, I'm only using the Magnate for just like the physical damage and a little bit of the elemental resistances. So let's give it a try. The build kind of struggles a little bit with single target damage. So we do have a 6-link Ancestral Warchief set up with Ruthless support, Maim, melee physical damage support, added fire, and Culling Strikes. Culling Strikes just for helping out with single target situations. Because I didn't go over it. Infernal Blow, I don't know if this is like the most optimal support gem setup for this particular skill. Still working it out, still leveling the gems. But we have Infernal Blow linked to Ancestral Call for the clear speed, added fire damage support, Pulverize, Combustion. This really, really helps to have her Embrace as consistently as possible. And it also gives us a little bit of fire penetration, which is nice. And then elemental damage with attack support. Potentially pulverize could be switched out for something like damage on full life. And that would still be probably pretty darn good. Or even melee physical damage would be pretty nice. So let's get into it. That being said, we are also running all 3 heralds as well as precision to give us a little bit more accuracy and a small chance to crit. We don't have a major aura other than precision, which feels kind of weird. But as you can see, even without a headhunter, the build's doing just fine. This is, however, like a tier 9. My character is level 91 at the moment, so we're significantly over-leveled for this, but our gems, however, are not. Skill gems are a little lacking. So this is the boss. Our single target damage, like I said, could be a lot better, but that was just fine in terms of the way that fight worked out. And we're cruising. So as you can see, the clear speed's just fine, the damage is just fine, and the playstyle is really just kind of a hit and run thing. We just sort of run up to a pack, tap it once, and keep on moving. Look at all this. Look at all that. I think it's about time for me to stop leveling up my precision. Okay. So, as I said, I do intend to make this my league starter. I'm going to probably have a pretty bad time because of that, but I'm okay with it. I like a little bit of a challenge. So, I'm pretty excited to go for it, realistically speaking. Of course it has elemental reflex. Better. I won't be killing this boss, probably. So, let's talk about some things. Obviously, as an elementalist, we do a lot of elemental damage. This build for me was inspired by a build that I think Mathil did in 3.4 or 3.5, whenever Delve was. He did a Voidforge Elementalist Conk Path character that converted a lot of physical damage over to elemental damage. It ran all 3 heralds. And that one obviously was using Consecrated Path. It was a little bit of a squishy build, and at the time I was way too new to the game to try such an ambitious build. I had a really bad time with it, I'll be honest, because I didn't understand how elemental conversion even worked back then. But this is essentially that build's redemption for me. And that being said, I'm still debating whether or not I'm going to stick to the Infernal Blow or if I'm going to use Consecrated Path, since it seems like this build is much more suited for clearing than it is bossing. I think the added mobility of Consecrated Path would be a little bit nicer for the character. So we're kind of juicing a little tiny bit. So that being said, if you happen upon a Voidforge next league, I do believe actually the Voidforge would be a better option. Not necessarily because it gets much more damage, I would assume it gets a little bit more damage, but because the drawbacks aren't there. Oh, I guess that's like the whole point of being a Golemancer that I didn't state. So for those of you who don't know, and since I'm bad at these build guide videos, I didn't even state that the Golemancer ascendancy, or the Golem nodes specifically with the Elementalists, were taken predominantly because of the enormous amount of just like percent physical or just percent damage scaling that you get through all of the different types of golems that you have summoned. But most importantly, it's the health regen that you get from having your stone golems. Let's see what my health regen is even at. I actually don't even know. Life regeneration per second, 802 life per second. So this is what's actually out-regenning the degen that we get from the drawback portion of her embrace on Onigoroshi, which states that we basically take somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.5% of our entire life pool per level per second. So if you're level 90, you're taking 45% of your life per second. So yeah, so we're taking what, 45.5% of our entire life pool per second in the form of fire damage, which is it could also be combated with like some max fire resist, or like even something like gosh, what is it called? A lore weave would be nice, getting those max fire reses up a little higher, which I think will actually be easier next league. I think I saw some things that have some max res stuff on them. So essentially that's why we chose the golems. The golems give us somewhere in the neighborhood of 200% increased just generic damage, and I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 125% or 225% increased buff effect from the other golems. So, you know, that means that the fire golem is giving you more damage, the stone golem is giving you more HP regen, the chaos golem is giving you even more physical damage mitigation, and etc, etc. You get more attack speed from your lightning golem, you get more accuracy out of your ice golem, all of that stuff. It just makes them all way more gooder, and I'm surprised I didn't die. So there you have it. The last thing I want to talk about before I close the video is how to go about leveling this character. I already stated that by the time you get to somewhere in the neighborhood of Act 3, once you're going through like the gardens and into the Scepter of God, you should have all of the things that you need to actually do your ascendancy. And so at that point, your passive tree should be just about here. Maybe you've taken Blast Radius already, and then you've just gone generically through here, taken all of these, and that's pretty nice. That'll put you in good standing to then just come up here and quickly snag this Golem Commander node, and immediately after doing that, when you start Act 4, you'll be given your first golems from, what's her name? I should go look. It starts with an O, I think. Anyway, you get your first golem gems in Act 4 from Oyun and Dahlia over here from one of the first quest rewards. And at that point you can buy, I recommend buying immediately the stone golem and the flame golem. Should be your first one. The obvious focus there being the HP regen to start mitigating the damage that you've definitely been taking from the Onigoroshi. Then by the time you get to Act 6, obviously you're going to want to cap out all of your resistances after beating the Act 5 Kitava. It's kind of a big deal. That's where something like the Magnate is going to come into like effect there. For the most part, you may not have a proper like 200 strength at that point, but if you get a well-rolled Magnate, which isn't that rare of a belt, you should be pretty close to actually benefit from the all resistances. And that'll be a really, really huge boon to you while you're leveling. Then besides that, I usually do my second labyrinth right at the start of Act 8, and then right at the sort of end of Act 10, I do my third one, which means that I'll have, realistically speaking, 4 or possibly 5 golems. It depends. Realistically, let's say 4. Those 4 golems are going to give you 80% increased damage, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 100% to 200% increased buff effect from the other golem effects. Let's see. So yeah, you'll have 200% increased buff effect from your golems, which goes up to 250 once you have all 5 types of golems out. It's the types of golems, not necessarily the number of golems, that's really, really important at the early game. The number of golems is only important for the damage component of the Liege of the Primordial, and also the damage component of the Allomancer node. However, the increased buff effect is unique to the different types. So 5, I think, is the maximum you can get. You could run a carry-on golem to get a 6th, but I don't think that you actually benefit from the carry-on golem's buff at all. So, for the most part, that's the build, guys. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I got to admit, when the gem levels are really low, you are really, really squishy. The health pool that I have here is kind of insufficient. I just really quickly threw this character together. As you can see, there's basically no HP on this. There's basically no HP on my boots. There's some kind of HP on my ring. And honestly, the lowest possible roll of HP on my Mark of the Elder. Really, I'm only benefiting from this body armor, which I got several leagues ago. I think I got this at the end of Betrayal. And then this is kind of a piece of garbage too. But it's still working just by the sheer virtue of the unique items that are in the build. So if you can get your hands on an Onigoroshi and the individual components of a Golem build, I think you got yourself a pretty solid start. It's definitely going to be a grind to get all of these things, but I've honestly been having a really good time with it, and I don't see any reason why this build wouldn't see you all the way through the end game, just purely on the virtue of the unique items alone. And then it's up to you to fill out the other slots. And obviously a headhunter isn't necessarily needed by any means, but it is a lot of fun. So anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys have a really great start to next league. I think it's gonna be so good. I think I'm really, really gonna enjoy it. The past couple leagues have been kind of sleeper for me. I haven't really been having that much fun in the past like 6 or 7 months playing Path of Exile, but next league looks really good. The Metamorph, not that stoked on that. Not really that stoked on like adding things to my character necessarily, but augmenting and creating my own boss encounters, that's going to be a great time. So good luck, and I guess I'll see you there. And as always, if you guys get the opportunity to try and do something nice for somebody, life can be pretty tough sometimes, and we all need a little help once in a while. So until next time, take care of one another.